Hi everyone and welcome to this video on how to make these fingerless gloves or mittens. This video is meant to complement the written instructions that come with the pattern, which you can find by following the link in the description. Now let's get to it. We'll start with the embroidery. If you already know how to embroider your fabric, or if you want to skip the embroidery, you can go to the following timestamp. I start by taking my embroidery hoop, which already has some sticky stabilizer placed inside it. I'll place my fabric on top, making sure the pile or flow direction is correct, and check the placement against my design. If needed, I reposition the fabric. I'll place a contrasting piece of fabric on top, again checking the pile direction and check if my design will fit properly. Once my fabric is prepared, I take everything to my embroidery machine. Since I'm using fluffy fabric, I don't want my stitches to sink into the fabric and disappear. So I use a piece of water-soluble stabilizer and place it on top of the fabric. I very carefully hold the stabilizer in place while my machine completes the first set of stitches. Once those stitches are done, I remove the water-soluble stabilizer and very carefully cut away all the excess fabric. I'm using very small embroidery scissors to do this. Make sure you don't cut into your stitches. Once that's done, I use a piece of tape to remove the excess fluff and take everything back to my embroidery machine. I cut a bit too close and had to redo the heart later. I once again place a piece of water-soluble stabilizer on top and let the machine do its magic. Be very careful if you use your fingers to move the stabilizer out of the way. I again remove the water-soluble stabilizer and carefully remove the fabric from the sticky backing, removing the leftover sticky backing from the back of the fabric. I take a second piece of matching fabric, again checking the pile direction, and trace around my pattern piece twice, making sure I mirror it on the second piece of fabric. I'm using a heat erasable pen, but you can use chalk or any other type of pen, as long as you make sure it doesn't show through the fabric. Once I've traced around the pattern piece, I cut it out with seam allowance. I'm leaving a little bit of extra seam allowance at the top and bottom of the piece. I do the same for the contrasting lining fabric, but this time I use the same 1 cm seam allowance all around. I place both layers of fabric on top of each other, right sides together, and sew the longest side seam. For this seam, I use a regular sewing foot and a straight stitch. Once that's done, I take my pink piece and lay it flat, with the wrong side up. Following the marking on the pattern piece, I pin and sew a piece of elastic that matches my wrist circumference. I pin one end of the elastic in place and stretch it out to the other side, making sure not to stretch the fabric. Use a zigzag stitch to sew the elastic in place. I also make sure the side seam lays flat. Depending on your fabric, this stitch will be visible on the outside, so keep this in mind when choosing your thread. After this, I lay the two pieces right sides together and sew the top and bottom edge, leaving the space between the thumb and the fingers open. Make sure to align the side seams. For this part, I again use a straight stitch. The next thing I do is only for video purposes. I tried using my heat erasable pen, but it wasn't showing up well. So I used a black pen to mark the V shape between the thumb and the fingers. If you use a regular pen, this may show through the fabric, so please don't do this. Now comes the hardest step. I fold the piece so both right sides touch each other, forming a tube. I check if all the edges align as they are supposed to, and then fold the piece again. I cut open the V-shape I drew earlier. Be careful with this step. The closer to the point of the V, the more movement your thumb will have, but if you cut too far, your glove may tear with repeated use. I once again fold one of the sides toward the inside, forming the tube. I line the seams to form the V-shape and pin the rest of the circle. You can either sew this part by hand or use a zipper foot. Be very careful, because this part is what will allow your thumb to move. Try to stitch as close to the markings as possible. I align the elastic and the seams and clip the open seam closed. I sew all around, leaving a hole between two pins. This hole will be used to turn the glove right side out. Once this is done, I turn the glove right side out and check the fit on my hand. If I'm happy with the fit, I again turn the glove inside out and trim the seams. Be careful not to trim the seams too close to the stitches. Once I've trimmed the seams, I again turn the glove and close the hole in the side seam using a leather stitch. If I want to stop here, I can, but I want my fingers to be separated, so there's one final step I have to do. I put on the glove, pinch between my fingers, and tack the two sides of the glove together. I do the same for the other fingers, and that's it. Repeat for the other glove, and you're done. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time.